Hi, my name is Carol, and I donated my kidney to my dad about 2 years ago. My dad is a wonderful person and a great dad, and he's one of the bravest and the strongest people I've ever met, um, which made it very hard to see him be impacted so much by kidney disease. He was diagnosed about 35 years ago. He has been taking good care of himself. He has had excellent care from his nephrologist. And through diet, he's been able to control the progression of the disease. But it's been on my mind, of course, as his daughter. And about 10 to 15 years ago, as I began to think more about what the future might hold for my dad, knowing that this was not a curable disease, and what the prospects might be, I decided that if the time came and he needed a kidney, that I would want to donate mine to him. Like I said, the condition progressed really slowly, thankfully. But about 4 years ago, he suffered a heart attack. And thankfully, he recovered well from the heart attack, but his kidneys did not. And their function began to drop pretty drastically, fairly fast. So he was referred to the kidney clinic to begin to look at options. And we all went with him to his first appointment to begin to look at all of the different options from dialysis to kidney donation. And we learned that his best bet was to have a kidney transplant, and ideally from a living donor. So that's when I raised my hand and said I'd like to be tested. And as it turns out, I was the only one in our immediate family, and that would have been a viable candidate. So we began the process of testing, both of us. So my family was naturally worried about the idea of me donating. My husband was a bit worried. We have a young child who was 4 at the time, and as well as my parents and my sister, of course. But we did a lot of research. We looked at some of the research done around the long-term outcomes of donors, and learned that they live a long and healthy life, and they have the same average life expectancy of someone who didn't donate. We also learned that the testing that was done was very thorough, so that was reassuring. I invited my sister and my husband to join me during my appointment so they could ask their own questions. My dad was seen by a separate team, and they do that purposely so that um, each the donor and the recipient can be cared for independently. And at the end, we felt really reassured that this was the right decision. And I received a lot of support from my family and also from my friends, and felt very comfortable with the decision to donate. Surprisingly, I didn't feel scared. And I was quite surprised that I wasn't feeling scared. I think I felt really confident with the decision, and I think that carried me through the testing. It was about a year of testing. Um, Maybe what I didn't anticipate is that it's a bit of an emotional roller coaster to go through the testing, because you know that at any point you might get rejected, and that the prospect of being rejected was not one that I wanted to consider. So I think that was a piece that I think that was more weighing on me than feeling scared. I did feel scared the night before. I think that's natural. I felt scared. As I was being rolled into the operating room. Um, but I think it was manageable. I had a lot of support from family. I had been chatting with someone who had donated in the past, and her advice was really helpful. I think she anticipated the night before that I would be feeling a bit scared, and I got a text from her just exactly when I needed it, saying, "You've got this. You've got a great team. You're going to be fine. What you're feeling is normal." So that was nice to receive. But no, I think that the feeling of sort of that decision of really doing this made me really not feel as scared as I think I would have felt. So right after I woke up from surgery, I had this overwhelming feeling of happiness. I never felt that sort of strong, overwhelming feeling before. maybe when my son was born, but other than that, I hadn't. And I know that, I still had drugs in my system, and I know that I had maybe a strong feeling of relief that I was fine and that my dad was fine. Um, but it was pretty overwhelming, and a few days later, the drugs had worn off, and that feeling was still there. And a week later, it was still there, and a few weeks later, it was still there. It was not expected. Of course, I expected to feel happy. I was doing something for someone I love very much, and it's a big thing to do. But I had this really strong sense of feeling grateful. I'm really blessed to have had this opportunity. Um, I think many people wish they had this opportunity. Most of us, at some point in our lives, we have people in our lives that get sick with chronic illnesses, incurable illnesses that they may not recover from, and all we can do is stand by their side and support them the best we can. Very few people get the chance I had to actually do something to change their prognosis, and that was pretty powerful. And I think that really, contributed to that sense of happiness that I still have, and of feeling grateful. It was a really powerful experience. So I was in the hospital for about 5 days, and then I came home to to my husband and my son. And my husband was wonderful. He really helped me to make sure that I didn't have to do anything for a few weeks while I was still recovering from the surgery. Neighbors helped out. They brought food. My sister also was going back and forth between my parents' house and my house to help us out. So I felt really supported. And like I said, I had a young kid of 4 years old at the time. He was still in preschool, and his preschool was wonderful and also really supportive, because I was conscious around what that might mean to him and how he might understand what was happening. But I did feel like my community really came together and really supported both my dad and myself. So the first few days, I'll admit, they were a bit rough. But once I got home, I started to really recover fairly quickly. One of the best bits of advice that I got from one of the nurses at the clinic is to expect ups and downs in the recovery. And that was helpful to know, because that's the way the recovery went. I had some good days and some bad days, and knowing that that was just a part of the process was helpful. But I would say that I was back to normal. After 2 weeks, I really actually felt almost back to normal. And after 4 weeks, I felt very good. I was doing all the normal things. Of course, I was being careful not to carry heavy things, um, and was making my husband still do all the laundry and all of the cleaning. But yeah, I felt pretty much back to normal. And in fact, 2 months after surgery, I had a work trip that I went to by myself, traveling just for a week, 4 countries by myself, and I felt perfectly fine. I felt really healthy, very strong, fully recovered by then. My health after donating has been great. I haven't had any issues with my health. I feel just as healthy as before, even a bit more healthy, because it was a bit of an inspiration for my husband and myself to really. We were healthy before we took good care of ourselves, but we really started to make some changes to our eating habits and our lifestyle. And in many ways, I actually feel better now than I did before. I had no impacts from having donated. But the best part about donating a kidney is definitely seeing the impact this has had on my dad. He's been transformed by it. It was difficult to see how much of the disease had taken a toll on him, how tired he was all the time, how much he wasn't able to participate in things that he loved to do and spend time with his grandchildren and his family and friends and just live his life. And the transformation has been a 180 on him. He's just back to his old self, and I think there was a cloud hanging over him about the prospect of dialysis and continuing to deteriorate, and that's been lifted. And so it's been wonderful to see that. And it's also been transformative to myself and to my family. I think it just is a really strong reminder to not take anything for granted. Um, and this year has been difficult for everyone, and that reminder has been really present for me. And if I could, I would do it again. And if anybody's thinking about donating, I would really encourage you to look into it. I know it's not for everyone, but I would say that for me, it has been a wonderful experience, and I think it's one worth pursuing. And we have the reassurance of the care, of the medical care, to really manage the risks, and I would do it all over again.